I'm Linda Goode Bryant, and I'm the founder and president of Project Eats. Project Eats is a network of community-based food systems that provide food in communities that need access to fresh, nutritious food. It provides jobs and career opportunities to the residents in those communities. And it provides programs that support residents in the communities we're in achieving their health goals so that they can live healthy lives and thrive. So how did I come to do Project Eats? I mean, my background is one where I'm an artist, but I'm not an artist and never really have been that uses canvas or paper or wood or metal to create objects. I've always been interested in art and believed in, not only interested in, but as a child, art was so powerful for me in my life, and it got me through things that, you know, perhaps you don't consider art getting you through, but it did, and so I've always been interested in art and creating art that has the ability to tangibly change conditions in the place where it occurs. So that's the language I have used for a long time. And initially, to use an example, I was probably 6, 7, or 8, can't remember now, and I asked my dad for a nickel to buy a popsicle. And he said no. And I said, why? And he said, because it's my nickel and I decide what I'm going to do with it. And interestingly enough, I didn't get angry. Like, I still marvel at that. It was like, that made perfect sense to me. It was like, it's his nickel. He gets to decide what he does with it. I said, I guess I got to make me a nickel. And so, and I said, well, what do I have? And what we had was a front porch. What we had was kids in the neighborhood, and what I had was way too much watching of like the Little Rascals and Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney movies and things like that. And my shero as a little girl was Pippi Longstocking. And Pippi Longstocking didn't have adults. I mean, I tended to gravitate toward youth or young adult characters that were having to figure out how to do things on their own with what they had. And so in that moment, I said, I can come up with some music and some lyrics, and I can teach the kids in the neighborhood the songs and the dances, and we'll throw musicals on the front porch and not charge our parents to come, but charge them for lemonade. And so I and the kids initially, this is the story of my life. And like I said, I was somewhere around between 6 or 8. And the kid said, you can't do that. And I have to tell you another part, and I can't explain it, but when someone says can, I look for the can. And I'm going, yeah, we can do this. No, we can't. No, we can't. So I realized I had to go off and make some songs. So I made some songs up, and I said, okay, here's some songs. I started double dutching, jumping rope and singing songs. So what is that? I said, that's a song in our musical. And so they were going like, she's making songs. Maybe we can do this. So anyway, we did it, and I'm going to tell you, we made enough money each summer to buy our own popsicles and didn't have to ask anybody about giving us a nickel. And so that to me was my art. Obviously the musical was part of it. I mean, the music and the dancing and stuff, but yeah. And then after I came to New York, I started a gallery. And it was called Just Above Midtown, or JAM. Everybody called it JAM Gallery. And it was the first gallery to show the work of African American and other artists of color in a major gallery district. Then I started making films, documentary and experimental films. I got sick. The art world was, I just, like, the market had just taken over, and I wasn't interested in the market. So I started making movies and found heaven in that. But in the process of making movies, in 2008, you may recall, in 2008, there was a global food crisis. And it was caused when food prices went up. They increased drastically and radically and quickly. It was, worldwide. And so people who had limited financial resources had a hard time getting food. And then other folks were going to big box stores and buying 100 pounds of rice and stuff. Everybody was getting nervous about what was happening to the food market. So I decided I was going to do this web series on the impact of the crisis on people with limited financial resources in the U.S., but then also around the world, and started pulling news footage down, and pulled down some footage from Port-au-Prince in Haiti, and the footage showed women making mud pies. Really beautiful footage of their hands making mud pies that were spiked with little pebbles and honey, and people were buying those to stave off their sense of starvation. And as I'm editing this footage, I'm sobbing and going, what kind of world do we live in? And at that point I said, everybody should be able to grow their own food, even if we live on concrete. And that was the birth of Project Eats. I have to say, making films is heaven for me. It is absolute just joy. But in that moment I realized that this might have more purpose and be more effective than documentary films. And so I said, let's grow food, to myself. So, all of us have how many voices in our head? Sometimes you can't even count them. There's so many voices in our head talking to one another. And in that moment, the two dominant voices were, are you out of your mind? You don't know anything about farming. When you were a kid, the milk carton, the soil, Linda, remember the pea seeds? Nothing grew in your milk carton. What in the world are you doing? And I said, go away. I'm going to create farms, and the farms are going to be a network of farms, so that you have clusters in neighborhoods, and then you have farm clusters in neighborhoods throughout a city, so that it's possible on small plots to grow enough food to contribute significantly to the food supply in a city. And to do this in neighborhoods where people don't have access to food and have limited resources, financial resources, to do it there as a potential economic engine where they're producing food for themselves and also for the larger city through this network of farms. So that's how I got into Project Eats. And as it has developed, I realized that the real focus is it's a food system that we're trying to create with farms that are the lead. Currently, Project Eats has farms in 4 boroughs of New York City's 5 boroughs. We farm in Manhattan on Randall's Island, where we have our largest farm. It's just under 2 acres. We have farms in the Bronx, a rooftop farm in the Bronx. We also have a rooftop farm in Manhattan. We have a half-acre farm in Brownsville, a community in Brooklyn. And we also have a small farm, about 3,000 square feet, at a permanent housing complex for formerly homeless veterans. And so we work with the residents there, the veterans, and then there are also some senior women who live there, grow food there and distribute it amongst themselves.
This location here on Ward's Island is the largest in our network. You've had the opportunity to kind of see the different production areas. The total of the land mass here in acreage is about 2 acres. We've had mixed success being able to cultivate all of that over the years. And we do have farm locations in 4 of 5 boroughs in New York City, 2 of which are new rooftop partnerships and developments. One in Bronx on the roof of a new community center that's been built out by St. Barnabas Hospital, where we do a lot of our pharmacy programming in the Bronx. The Lower East Side is on top of a new public market building, in a partnership there in the Lower East Side. And the core of our operations, where we kind of started our bread and butter, and where a lot of our youth and resident farm staff reside, or initially resided, is in Brownsville in Brooklyn. And we currently operate 2 sites in the Brownsville, East New York area. And one is Marcus Garvey Apartments, our Brownsville community farm there, which is about a ½ acre in size, and then a small garden in the East New York Health and Hospitals healthcare institution.
I'd say the most immediate impact that Project Eats has in a community is providing food and making it affordable, meaning we price at income appropriate prices in the communities where we farm, and also offer options like pay what you think it's worth. So we believe in making good, nutritious food available to everybody regardless of income. Another impact we have is on the people in the community, and the opportunities they have and pursue, and especially in the farming area. So like one of the farmers who's been with us for 5 years now is Johnny Vickers, and Johnny lives in Brownsville, and he came over and initially started volunteering, and before we knew it, he was learning the skills that our farmers had, and we hired him to work with us. So, and he's been with us, like I said, almost 5 years. Our youth staff, our youth farmers, are amazing. Most youth stay with us about 4.5 to 5 years. And many are very interested in farming as a career. And one of the challenges, frankly, that we've had is that once they learn farming from us, and then we have a partnership with a farm upstate, Sky High Farm, in Hudson, New York. And so they will have them come up and spend time there during a summer, so they learn about livestock, so they get a sense of rural farming. And the big challenge is, once that happens, they are ready to farm somewhere rural. So, and our goal is to maintain a farmer, skilled farmers in the communities where we're farming. So we've got to figure that one out. They may have to go through a test. Will you ever leave New York? No. But anyway, so that's another thing we do. And then I think also very key, with our various programs, our pharmacy programs, our free breakfast programs, and et cetera, we are building demand from residents in the community for fresh vegetables as part of their meal plans, and having great success with that. Whenever I talk about Project Eats, it's interesting. People either come away with the notion that Project Eats is about farm enterprises, or they come away and think it's about people. And I don't think in that way. It's like it's both and. It's not either or. And that it's more like a quilt, where each patch tells its own discrete story, but when interwoven with other patches, there's this much larger contextual story that's being told. And so I perceived Project Eats in that contextual patchwork way. And one of the reasons farms are essential to Project Eats, relative to all the other things we're doing, is that we farm in communities where can't is the prevalent word. It's just prevalent. Can't. And to be able to do what we do successfully in a partnership with residents in the communities, has to become prevalent. And what the farms do is provide can in a very tangible way. It's not someone saying to people in the community, oh, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this. The farms actually, in 45 to 60 days, we can transform a lot that's been vacant and unused and neglected for decades into a farm that's growing food. And that is so powerful. I mean, residents, when we've gone into communities, residents are like, what are you doing? You can't start a farm here. Why would you start a farm here? Why would I eat out of that farm? Do you know what's been on that land? Why would I do that? Why would I do that? And 60 days later, it's like, here it is. Here it is. So anyway, so the farm is the first can that becomes the foundation on which we can build strong relationships with the residents in the community. Ultimately, Project Eats is successful when we become obsolete. And what I mean by that is that the vision for these farms is that through our partnerships with residents and other stakeholders in a community, that residents should be operating and managing these farms, that they should provide not just jobs but careers for the folks in the communities where the farms exist. In addition to doing farming, we also do educational programs in public schools that are considered low, quote unquote, low resource schools through agricultural based curriculum that we provide to classroom teachers, and also through after school programming where during the school year students learn how to farm, and then we hire from that pool of students used to work with us 9 weeks or 20 weeks during the summer and fall. We also make every effort to hire adults who go through a training program to work with us. We have a pharmacy program with an F, where we partner with medical providers whose doctors prescribe fresh vegetables as part of their patient treatment plans. And we fill those prescriptions. And in addition to that, we also provide workshops, and this year, coaches to help support residents moving to a healthier diet and a healthier lifestyle so that they have support doing that. You know, that's really hard to do. So to provide people with support, coaching support to do that. We also do community-based programs which range from free breakfasts for elders in the community and also for families with children. They're largely vegan. There will be eggs. And what's fascinating about that is residents will come for the free breakfast and like, what is this? What is this? And it's wonderful because they'll eventually taste it and then they'll go, this isn't bad, this is okay. I will say a favorite is avocado toast, okay? But other things become favorites as well. It was really good to know that we could operate during COVID because farms are essential services, and that we could shift our programming to providing free food bags to residents in the communities that we serve. And it's just amazing. Like that in and of itself is amazing in a very different way than what we usually experience. All of it has its rewards, but there was something about being able to serve people food who really needed food and couldn't buy it for whatever reason, well, for lack of money, was good. And then we teamed up with a food pantry. Not easy in New York City, not easy. It's like, you're a farm, you don't have an indoor space. What are you talking about? You're gonna be a food pantry. But we were able to finally get brought into the system by the Food Bank of New York. And so in addition to providing the produce we grow, we have been able to provide dry goods and canned goods and et cetera to residents. And as a result, we've reached even more residents in the community who have a relationship with Project Eats that we can continue to develop. And in their bags, we produce a publication called The Companion. And The Companion largely provides everything from recipes to instructions on how to store vegetables so that they stay as long as possible, fresh in the refrigerator. But we also provide a forum for residents to tell the world what it thinks about things. Because we're in communities where the world is always telling itself and the rest of the world what they think about us. And it was about turning that around so that residents have a forum to be able to say, this is what I think about what's going on in my life, in my community, in the world.
This year's been very different than last year. But I think what we're doing this year is also a really important model, because if you're looking at both hiring labor, which we do in a number of different ways, you know, we do get grants to hire some of our youth staff in particular, but you know, wages that you generally have to pay in the city are higher than you would elsewhere too. So we've particularly relied on volunteer labor this year because it just made sense with COVID. But I think it's an essential model for both bringing people onto sites, because these are public sites. I mean, we're right here on New York State parkland, New York City parkland, and it's one thing, like, you know, if you run a community farm, people want to be part of it. So you have to bring people onto the farm in some sense and not keep people out. And then when you're bringing people who don't know how to farm onto the farm, you're gonna have things go wrong, and you're gonna have things done not exactly how you want them. And I know I don't think I'm touching on like the crops exactly just yet, but this is something that I think we really need to look at, you know, going forward, is that volunteer involvement. And like, we do a lot of hand weeding this year, where typically if we had a full staff, we know we might do a diligent kind of regular cultivating regimen, but you can't hand a volunteer a collinear hoe and expect them not to chop your kale, your collards, your greens in half. So that has really just changed things entirely. Also, just in terms of planning, you can't really plan diligently with regular volunteers, because people aren't going to show up. People aren't incentivized necessarily to show up consistently. So you have to kind of plan for some people to show up, not everybody, and you might not get done everything you expect to in a week. And then you just got to pick back up when you have the opportunity to get those hands on the ground again. So I just wanted to touch on the labor piece. Also, here, you know, part of our mission is to take particularly youth from the communities, but also adults, and integrate them into the farms and develop their skills. The way that we've done that in the past is to have some dedicated plots which were for youth, and then we would have them help with certain things on the farms at other times. But we've fully integrated our youth directly into our farm team, and you have to be very patient, knowing that everything is also not going to be done perfectly every time. Everything's not going to be done super quickly, efficiently every time, and you have to just continue to work and develop those skills, track and monitor them, and make sure you're doing a good job being a teacher all the way. And that's kind of also essential to understanding the context with which we operate our farm plots here. You know, we're not working with predominantly experienced farmers, and we can't really afford to work with like experienced farmers all the time. We're getting by where we can, and making it work.
I truly believe that food should be grown in communities. That doesn't exclude food being grown elsewhere, but that we should be able to grow our own food where we live. And I think that people around this world should start doing that, should start focusing on creating small plot, high yield farms in their communities that support having fresh vegetables, having essential food where people live. That's one of the, I think it's one of the greatest things you can do, especially now. And when you think about just the challenges that we face with regards to food. I mean, COVID is one example that's immediate and right now. But prior to even COVID, we have the challenges that are starting to affect us just in being able to grow food in soil. I'm a soil loyalist. So let me start there. I'm a soil loyalist. And so another way people can have impact is to begin, those who are creative and can imagine beyond belief, imagine, how do we grow food in soil as it becomes increasingly more difficult because of drastic climate shifts and so many other things? How do we deal with hunger that doesn't make us reliant on other forms of growing outside of soil? That's one of the things that I envision as Project Eats' research, development, and innovation wing. How are we going to ensure that we can still grow food in soil in the coming years? So one of the ways that we get youth involved is in our partnerships with schools, public high schools and middle schools. And what we do is we bring in these 2 bicycles that are on stationary stands, right? And they're hooked up to blenders. And the bicycles are also hooked up to a generator. And so we go into the cafeteria during the various lunchtimes during the day, and the kids are like, "What's this?" They say, "Hey, why don't you pedal some juice or make a smoothie? You can make a smoothie. Pedaling a bike? Yeah, come on. And then you get 2 on it, and it's a competition. And then next thing you know, the lunchroom is cheering for one cyclist or the other cyclist. And in the end, when it's done, when the smoothies are made, they drink them. If you can imagine, can you imagine going up to a youth and say, "Come on and drink some kale juice"? It's not going to work. They've made this, and they are drinking it up and going, "This ain't bad. So we've done so many things. We, one, have shown them that we can generate our own power. That humans can generate power to charge our cell phones or our watches or whatever these things are, these devices we have now. We can do that. It doesn't, we don't have to rely on other things. So that opens up minds. They're just completely floored by it. The competition piece is fantastic. And then, to me, the wonderful thing is that they're drinking juices and smoothies they would not be drinking. And they're cool with it. And what's really great about it is that the youth then will get involved in our after-school farming program, develop farm skills, and then work for us in the summer. It's a win-win-win. The bikes are fantastic. And we've done them in schools. We did it outside the Brooklyn Museum at one point. We were part of an exhibition, Project Eats was, called Crossing Brooklyn in 2014. And we built a farm on the grounds of the Brooklyn Museum. And we had the bikes outside the museum, and people loved it. Adults, young people, like the skateboarders that drive people crazy on the museum entrance area outside, the little plaza outside. It's like, oh, these skateboarders. They put those skateboards down and just start pedaling. Yeah, it's very, very effective.
The thing that brings me the most satisfaction in working for Project Eats is the individuals I get to work with on a day-to-day basis. We all grind it out together for a shared mission, which everybody has come to from their own context in life, and being able to share that time on the farm with them every day is more rewarding than you could imagine.
So when I first had the notion of doing Project Eats, the voices in my head were, one voice goes, okay, we're going to do this. And the other voice said, where are you going to get land? You don't have a dime. Where are you going to go buy land in New York City where the real estate value never depreciates? Just does it, So how are you going to do that? And it occurred to me, well, hey, there's land that's underused or not being used, that people own, and whether it's the city of New York or whether it's private owners, it's there, or nonprofit organizations and schools, it's there. So partner. And so the way that we have access to land is that we create partnerships with people who have either long-term license agreements for the land or own the land. And they extend that long-termness to us, and we develop farms on land that's really prime land in New York City through partnerships. We had almost 5 acres throughout this. We were on about 10 or 12. At some point we hit 12 farms. So between 10 and 12 for a number of years, we had that many. We actually downsized largely because it's challenging growing in a city. So let me say, it's challenging growing in a city. One of the things that we had to develop, and we're still developing it, is the consistency of a farmer. So like we have restaurants, high-end restaurants, to middle-range restaurants, to the neighborhood restaurant, who love our story and want to buy food to support food in the communities where we farm. But a restaurant, a chef needs a guarantee that you're going to deliver the same amount each week for the life of that plant, for the life of that vegetable. And that's been hard for us in the city. It's different than being on a rural farm where everybody's on one piece of land, and you've got essentially the farmer who's saying this is what's going to get done and stuff. We've got multiple farmers on different sites. And so we're growing into now that space where people understand, like, we have to grow consistent amounts. The quality has to be consistent. We've got to reduce our pest and disease loss factor, all those things. And we're at that place now, which is great. When I talk about Project Eats, I talk about our farms, I talk about our pharmacies, and our workforce development and employment program. And the thing that I don't talk about, which I'm aware of increasingly, is that we are also in the business of creating can in places where can't is prevalent. Creating can requires a whole lot of creativity and imagination, commitment, and determination. Not just with the folks who work at Project Eats, but with the people in the community. And that cross-pollination of those qualities as we face each challenge and success, to me, is as important as the food we grow and the opportunities that get created through the work we do.
Come alive, come alive.